4 o'clock, Friday afternoon. I'm going to walk around and see if I can make the camera do lots of panning. Let's see if the camera can find me. No, they've got automatic control back in the video. All right, well, what is the name of the session? Oh, yeah. Not Geek Fest. Teknoid Fest. No, we had to rename it. People were offended by the word geek. Like Teknoids is better, right? Do we have a trademark on Teknoids yet?
In the state of Georgia.
Good. This session is about Teknoids.net, and I'm stealing the first few minutes of the session to do a sort of a why, and then quickly turning it over to Elmer for a how. In other words, the bulk of the session is to talk about about how it was actually built, what's the guts underneath Teknoids.net. But I thought it would be useful to do sort of a little bit of a pitch here. First of all, in 1991, oh man, I'm really sounding like an old man when I say, back in 1991, there weren't many Teknoids. There were, dozens or so. And now that the community is much, much, much larger, there's a need to be able to more efficiently share information. But because everybody is so busy, there's a need to create a method or a process by which that information can easily be shared. All right? And that's what Teknoids.net or the Teknoids website is about. It's supposed to fill a gap between the daily posts or the questions that are posted on Teknoids and the yearly get-togethers where we actually see each other's faces and sort of reestablish relationships and things like that. So Teknoids.net, the website, is will be an attempt to sort of capture things in all kinds of formats, white papers or bits of research that people have done, or small sub-communities of effort, sharing of code. There's a bit of an open source, we can all help each other sort of flavor to it. At least I hope there will be. And that's why it's technically owned or funded by CALI, because I believe that it's a natural sort of extension of what CALI does with this conference, bringing together the law school IT community. All right. For the most part, though, its success or its efficacy or its value is going to be driven by you, and not just you, but you, pointing at the camera, and other people who might be listening. So it's not a heavy burden I'm trying to place on you, but just sort of think about what would be extremely valuable to you as a law school IT person if somebody else would do the work. Because even at this point we're seeking good ideas, and I will try to act as a sort of gatherer of resources or a moderator of things or something like that. And with Elmer's help, we'll try to point people to do mini projects that will become, wow, I'm really glad somebody did that. And they're the type of things that are only going to be of interest probably to the law school IT community. One of the first ones, or one of the ones that hopefully is going to be worked on is recently there was a little discussion on Teknoids about materials for blind students or for disabled students in other ways, right? And it became clear that a few people have done a lot of research or have already done the hard research on that. And you know what's going to happen. 8 months later, somebody's going to say, has anybody heard anything about, and then about 8 months after that, somebody's going to say, has anybody heard anything about, and rather than those sort of endless cycles of, we've all done this before, and hoping that the same person who posted last time is there, we want to grab it, get it up on the website, and then maybe either find volunteers or pay a little bit of money to people to keep the information up to date on a more constant basis. All right, so it's that sort of things that I hope to see Teknoids. It's your website. I know that's such a trite phrase. I apologize, but in reality, that's what I hope it eventually will become. All right. So Elmer, why don't you take it from there?
I have to turn my microphone. Good afternoon. Is this working? Yeah, it is Friday afternoon. It's after 4 o'clock, and I've talked so much to folks in the past 2 days that my voice is a little gravelly, so I imagine this sounds really well. Thank you. Remember, this is being broadcast, and there are mics in the ceilings. Before I sort of get into everything that I want to talk about Teknoids.net and the software that's behind it and everything, I wanted to just sort of point everybody at this book, Philip and Alex's Guide to Web Publishing. If you haven't read this book, you should go out immediately and buy it and read it, because it will do you a lot of good in terms of thinking about websites and how they work and that sort of stuff. It's a tremendous book, and the ideas that are in this book became the software that we're using for Teknoids.net. Okay, it's a great book. It's printed on really nice, shiny, glossy paper, so it weighs about 30 pounds. It's got some fantastic pictures inside. That doesn't come out too well, but this is actually one of my favorites. It's a guy chopping fruit on somebody else's belly on a sort of a street performance kind of thing. But there are a lot of there are just photos throughout the book that are just really cool. So the software is also used for Photo.net as a website that also uses the software. So at this point I'm going to try this, and probably all kinds of lights are going to change and stuff. Okay, good. It worked. Okay.
It'll come back to self.
Okay. There we go. I'll just minimize that for a minute. My presentation is actually captured in the Teknoids.net website. I have to remember that I can walk all around with this, and so it'll work. This was actually the original presentation that I finished up last night and then decided that it was kind of pointless. So I did a new one for today. But you can actually get at this if you go to Teknoids.net site and click on presentations and list all of the presentations that are available. This is a public one. This sort of talks a little bit about my thought process and how I got to this software. But I decided not to kind of bore you with those sort of details today. To just suffice to say that I looked at everything that, or most things anyway, that purported to do any sort of portal or community site building framework. So think of Slash and those sort of things, and Zope I took a look at, and a bunch of other stuff before I came around to this. And it was actually kind of a tough decision, because, as we'll see, it was a whole different style of software, stuff that I'd never even wanted to contemplate again or some more. So I've actually got another presentation. As you can see, this was created this morning, so it's pretty good. And we will just... Okay. So... And this one's just called Inside www.teknoids.net. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through the software that lies underneath the system and talk about it a little bit, and then we can stop and ask me questions at any point along the way about this stuff, because I think a lot of it is software that we're not using generally in law schools. The database that's behind the whole thing is Postgres. And that is a different animal than MySQL. It's probably a lot closer to Oracle than anything else. The web server that serves it up is the open source AOL server, which AOL uses to run their digital community sites and some other stuff. But it's very different also. And then the actual software system is called OpenACS, and it's based in TCL, and it's definitely different and very exciting. So I'll just kind of go through these one at a time. The Postgres database, these little blurbs at the top, they actually come from the sites that I just sort of lifted the text right out, because they do a pretty good job of explaining themselves in a paragraph or two. All this stuff is open source. You can use it, modify it, whatever you need to do. It's fine. The big thing about using Postgres as opposed to Oracle when they took this whole thing, like you could always get the community system from, it actually, the ACS part stands for Ars Digita Community System. And you could always get that software, but the original ACS software runs on Oracle. Okay? You can, of course, in the educational community, grab a developer copy of Oracle for Linux and load it up. That only took me 2 days, so it's exciting. But I learned, well, some interesting things. Like you really need to have 7 physically separate hard drives to really run Oracle at an optimal speed. So, you know, cramming it onto one 3-gig partition was fun. But, I got to go. But, so the Postgres was the nearest database to Oracle that specifically passed what they call the ACID test, which is an acronym that probably database people can recite from memory. But the key thing about it is that it has to deal with like the ability of a database to handle transactions and that sort of thing in a reasonable fashion, which Postgres does, and which MySQL until the most recent version didn't do. And I'm not sure exactly what the state of transactions is in the latest version of MySQL. They're in there, but I'm not sure how well that works. And transactions are important in case something gets interrupted. So because this entire site is database driven, virtually every page you see is coming out of the database. So if something happens while information is going back and forth, the server dies or there's some kind of break in the connection, it's important that the database doesn't commit bad data back to the database. And so Postgres has those sort of things built in, so it kind of rolls back and that sort of stuff. And it's also open source, which is a good thing. Now, the AOL server, this is an interesting little bit of software with kind of a strange history. It started out as a commercial product, was purchased by AOL, evolved into an open source sort of thing. And AOL actually does use it to run their a lot of parts of their site, and that is some of the biggest and busiest websites in the world are running with this. It does a lot of cool things with threading in terms of operating efficiency. It also has TCL kind of at its sort of core level as a scripting tool, and that allows you to do things like write procedures in TCL that actually load into the server when you launch the server. And so that gives you a lot of the ability to add sort of a lot of power to the system. It deals with databases in a way that's completely foreign to anybody who's worked with Apache. If you work with Apache, if you're dealing with Perl or PHP, you've got to open a database, or you use either Perl or PHP to pool, open a database pool of connections and then draw on those. AOL plugs directly into the database at the server level. So when you start it, if you've turned on databases, and it'll support MySQL and Postgres and Sybase and ODBC and Oracle and a bunch of other stuff, if you turn on those pools, then database connections are available immediately from the server. So that when you're doing things in TCL, which is a scripting language that you use the most often with this, you need only say, DB connect, and something like that. But I mean, you just need to call a connection from the pool, run your database query, and then close it, and then that's it. You don't need to authenticate and do all that other sort of stuff that we typically do with PHP or even with Perl. So that actually saves a fair amount of time in the sort of milliseconds range, but every little bit helps. It adds up. It'll handle Perl and PHP, so you can do all those sorts of stuff. It'll handle XML. There are just a bunch of so you can still run all of your old Perl programs. I've run just about everything that most of the PHP stuff that I could throw at it actually works. PHP, interestingly enough, doesn't really take advantage of the database pooling in the right way. They're promising to fix that. And hopefully they will, because otherwise you don't really get anything out of using PHP with this. And it's really fast and efficient. And then there's the OpenACS community software, which is sort of the guts of the system. This is what lies on the database and the server, sort of the bottom layer, and then this is this is sort of the layer that ties the two together. That's really doing everything you need it to do. It actually the procedures, most of the procedures that are predefined for the actual system load with the server. So it's very closely tied directly to the server, and that makes it really fast. It also makes it really easy because there are just thousands of predefined procedures for doing all sorts of things. For example, I'm going to go down to the chat room now in case anybody's doing things there. Yeah, that's thanks, Dan. So to do things like get like the title of the presentation here that was entered as the title of the chat was actually pretty easy. It's just you just do a quick database query and just stick it in there, and it's really not it actually goes pretty fast. There you go. Thank you. Well, if you do think of anything cool, just let me know. And while it's fully database driven, so that everything is actually is coming out of the database, it can also deal with static HTML pages. The Teknoids archive that I borrowed from FindLaw. Is anybody from FindLaw here? No? Good. And then stripped all their stuff off. Because I liked SED. I learned some stuff about SED knock doing that. But that was okay. But there are now over 7,000 messages from going back to December 97 or something like that in the Teknoids archive that's searchable through here. And those are all static HTML pages, but they're all also, besides being 7,000 individual little files, they're also all loaded into the database. Which gives you the ability to do all sorts of cool database sorts of things with them, including doing things like adding headers and footers and that sort of stuff. And potentially, one of the things that the system allows for is the possibility of building some sort of reputation system kind of thing. So I could cull through the 7,000 messages, correlate the from addresses on the mail messages to people currently registered at Teknoids.net, and give you points for every post that you made, and then do something with that. I don't know what. It's just an interesting exercise. But yes.
I mean, it's funny. We actually did something similar to that by hand. I can announce this because Callosum is not here. Jim Callosum is going to be a recipient of the Excellence in Service Award tonight at the dinner. And the reason is because he's ostensibly the most prolific poster and in some ways the most useful poster on Teknoids. And so the people that recommended him for that award, said, well, he's really contributing to the community quite a bit. And so it's not just a joke to say a reputation system. The number of times you post or the number of things you contribute are an indicator of who's the core of a community, and a way to identify people to say, well, to go to and say, would you do this other project? Because you're sort of either a leader or someone who cares about what's going on in this community.
Right, and all that, and with that archive being searchable and being in the database, and there are things that we can do along those lines that actually make it quite valuable. And things like identifying sort of NT gurus and Linux gurus and Novell gurus, as sort of people to contact for those sorts of questions. Now, OpenACS is also very modular, so it's real easy to write, write more procedures and do different things with it. I've actually started a Teknoids module that. Because it started out primarily as a thing that I needed to do in order to get the look and feel stuff straight through the whole site, because there weren't consistent commands through the whole procedures through the whole thing, so I actually created some that I could call myself to sort of even that out. But my plan is to sort of build on that with some other things that I'm working on, and I'll talk about in a little bit. It also tracks all sorts of stuff. I mean, it drops a little cookie on your machine and keeps track. You'll notice here we have like 6 minutes on here. When I go to the next page, that'll refresh the time by checking the cookies. If you have cookies turned off, the site will fail. But it's kind of an interesting thing. It does allow for the ability to do things like look at the Teknoids law, the Teknoids archive, and I'll probably use that as examples for a lot of this stuff because that's kind of the big thing that we have right now. You can actually go back in, look at the individual pages and see who's looked at them, or just get an aggregate sort of thing and see that somebody, for some reason, this one thread was looked at like 90 times in the last 2 or 3 days, and you can do all that automatically. So all that stuff is being tracked and logged as you sort of roll through the site. You can also look at people's people's home pages and get an idea of and see like everything that they've posted on the site. So they've been participating in the bulletin boards and submitting news articles or doing presentations or suggesting news items or whatever it happens to be. It'll list all that on their page, so you can sort of do a search for them and see all the stuff that they've done. And again, we can tie that into the Teknoids archive and essentially click on Tom Bruce and find out exactly just what it is that he's been talking about all these years. Hi, Tom. Well, you kept mentioning me. And there are just a ton of features in the system, and some of which there's like a fully integrated e-commerce suite that's in here that's really quite cool. We could be up and selling stuff tomorrow if we actually had something to sell. But there's also an education module that's actually pretty well developed. It would need some tinkering to be useful in the law setting, but there is something there that's kind of useful, and it outlines courses and the whole thing, and allows professors to be able to or instructors or whoever to be able to upload documents, and they can have their own chat areas and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of cool. Now, the scripting language that lives under it is TCL. And this is the little blurb from the TCL page. And I found TCL not to be that difficult to pick up. Actually, it took about an hour to sort of get the gist of the whole thing. I think that like a lot of other scripting languages, if you've been dealing with something else, with Perl or PHP or C or anything else, you take a look at this and you're going to go, oh, this is too easy. So it's really not that hard, and so it's easy to pick up. The other thing that the only sort of data type that TCL deals with is strings. And after all, what is a web page but a big string? So it's actually really good for web stuff, even outside of AOL server. You can do a lot of stuff in even the Apache realm and stuff with TCL on the web. Let me just take next. All together now. At this point, let's see if anybody had anything to content management system. Well, interestingly enough, no. The content management system is in version 4, but it is really brain dead. Actually, I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but there is a content management system in version 4 of the regular Ars Digita system, and it is being ported over, although there's been some debate in the OpenACS folks as to whether it's even worth the time and effort. It is pretty rough. So a lot of folks are actually using other things for content management. So that is a sort of a thin spot. Let me just bring up another browser here real quick. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at the site-wide administration interface. This gives you an idea of the sort of the possibilities, because you can see some of the stuff that's available from the administrative interface that lets people, that can probably give you some idea about what we can do. We can create user groups. We can do that. I can assign a monetary value to each and every one of you. That was actually put in there for billing purposes. Say you're running this as a commercial site and you actually want to charge people who are wasting your bandwidth. It will actually generate billing and that sort of stuff. But in theory, you're also supposed to be able to set it so that it'll do things like, sort of just monitor the number of posts somebody makes and give them a value and generate a number. It doesn't work too well. Or maybe there's not enough stuff on here yet for it to work right. That could be part of the problem, too. We've got other stuff. There's a calendar. There's the chat, which, of course, we've all been peeking at. That was nice. Luckily, Tom's looking down at the keyboard. There's a news feature. There are classifieds. We could set up things to sell. We could serve up ads if we were so inclined. Well, maybe Westlaw or Lexis might be interested in. There's a neat sort of thing called banner ideas, which is a lot like an ad system, except you just sort of pick a random graphic and attach it link it to someplace on the web. And then you turn these on, and these graphics, little pictures will pop up, or whatever it happens to be, or it could just be a text link that'll say, why don't you go here, basically, and they occur at random on the pages. So, I've had some ideas about that. I mean, we could, grab logos of law schools and, just sort of, here, why don't you go check out, some law school's website. Why not? We can do contests. The first one might be for a new logo. I don't know. Could be. John can come up with some prize money. I don't know what the... we can do polls. There's currently a poll running on the front page, which I can monitor if people try to, kind of stack the poll, mess with the integrity of it, as the page indicates. We can do a glossary. The stolen equipment registry is a thing that carries over from the photo.net stuff, where people would register stolen camera equipment. We can do. I can send mail to everybody. We can do press stuff. In the user area, we've also got the ability to do address books. The bookmarks feature doesn't really work in this version. We can do all sorts of things. Down here near the bottom, this is a key one. The simple survey. I'm in the process, and I hope to have it done by now, but of course I didn't, of taking all of those CALI polls and turning them into one big survey, which will be quite lengthy, and will carry the disclaimer that this will take you probably 20 minutes to a half hour to complete. But I think putting it all in one place at once is probably a good idea rather than breaking it up. We'll open that survey, and we'll have it set up so that you'll be able to sort of identify the school you're with, to sort of make sure that like two people from Emory don't fill it out, and just sort of wash over each other's data. And then take on the task of sort of getting a handle on all this stuff. Somebody dropped me an email today wanting to know if I had any more recent data than the 1999 CALI poll on student laptops or something like that. Which is, of course, well, not really. I mean, not wide. So, getting this survey up and then sort of jogging people's memory on, maybe twice a year basis to update it, and should actually be quite useful. We can do some. There are other things in here. There's a portal system that lets you build like sort of a Yahoo-ish sort of thing that is okay. It'll handle static content. Actually, let's just take a quick look at that. We can take a look at, let's do a page report by number of views. So this is going to show, so these are all Teknoids messages that people have looked at X number of times. If we wanted to get a little bit more detail, we could click on the number, and that would tell us that these people looked at the little history of Teknoid stuff that's there. So I can, and only I can get, I think John and I are the only two administrators right now, so we're the only ones who can actually see this. The sort of standard user doesn't get to that. If I click this button, it'll actually climb through the document tree under the web root, looking for HTML files, checking to see if they're registered in the database. If they are, it goes on. If they aren't, it stuffs them into the database. This runs several times a day now to keep up with the Teknoids archive, which is always generating new HTML files. One other really neat feature about this and about the AOL server, the AOL server does extensive logging of what's going on inside the, I think I did it. I think it's dead. Did I kill it? No, it's just this. The AOL server does extensive logging of what's inside, sort of what's going on in terms of errors and things. So actually there haven't been any errors in the last 200K of let's just increase the size of that. There we go. So you can, it actually, here's some good errors. Well, because the thing about them is that it actually tells you exactly what's going on, and you can get in and debug them. Actually, I haven't debugged this one because it's not, I know what the problem is, but it's kind of trivial in terms of what it's doing, so it's not that big a deal. But this being able to get into these error logs like this and having it tell me exactly where the problem is and what's going on has allowed me to debug actually a whole host of problems that have cropped up. It also keeps me from breaking stuff for any extended period of time because it's real easy to find out exactly where the problem is. I like that a lot. And I think this is finished. Let's see what else. Okay, now, one of the really neat things about the whole thing too is some of the features that it does. If you actually look at a normal page, okay, this is kind of a regular page, okay. This is generated from HTML, okay. It actually adds headers and footers so it looks like all the rest of the site, okay. But two really cool things, and this turns up on sort of any kind of content page in the system, is that it adds two things at the bottom. It allows you to add a comment, or you can add a link. And if you're a registered user, you just need to click on either one of those, and it brings up another screen that allows you to add something, and then it ties it right in there. Basically, I have these open. They're like, you can set them for like different modes. I can say, nobody can do this, or I have to approve everything. Right now, they're like wide open, which is fine because we've got a relatively closed community here, and I think that's I don't think it needs to be policed at the level. Plus, that would take like way too long, as things go along. But it's actually kind of handy because you've got something here, and this is actually Tom's little history of the founding of Teknoids that I asked him for a while back. And if you wanted to get in there and talk about when it was that you first realized you were a Teknoid, for example, you could add that there, and that would build on it. In the forums areas with the bulletin boards, that's a little bit more. It's actually a little bit more useful. If we jump in here, WebCT, yeah. This is the WebCT question that I asked about if anybody was using it, and I had, had a couple of responses, and then you're given the option of being able to contribute another answer down on the bottom here, and those can be, straight text or HTML or whatever you want to put in. I think these aren't set up to allow the uploading of files, but that's a possibility. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for kind of interaction here. Let me just flip over to the next side. Oh, the do try this at home one. One of the things that I've been thinking about is like, could people use this for things other than like what I'm trying to use it for, which is Teknoids? And I think that the answer to that question is probably sure. Why not? The first thing that sort of came to my mind when I was looking at this, because I was also in discussions with our development office about how to have some sort of interactive, chatty sort of site for our alumni who were forever trying to find each other. We have a little web board sort of thing running, and they're always posting, are you out there, Bob, sort of stuff, but there are replies, because that's actually one of the most frequently, one of the most heavily visited single areas of our website. Our alumni are fairly active, and they're on the web, and they're they're coming to our site pretty regularly. So building something like this for them seems like a reasonable idea. I mean, you can give them some basic subset of some of these things, and see what they want to do with it. There's a module in here for a staff intranet that includes things like timekeeping and that sort of stuff, and basic address information, directories, those sorts of things. And that could be done, as a staff intranet sort of thing. You could build a student community if you really wanted to try something like that. If you wanted to do that. Now, in order to make your life easier, so you don't have to track down all that stuff, I've got these cute little CDs, which I will. I think I'm just going to, since everybody's kind of spread around, rather than having people running around passing them around, I'll just set them up here. And if you want to grab one, on your way out or something, by all means do. The CD contains all the software that you need to do this, and we're running it on Linux, and that's primarily where it's going to want to run, although you can get it to run in NT, because you can go out and you can get Postgres for NT, and the TCL and the AOL server stuff will run on NT, and then the OpenACS stuff will run on top of that. So you can do it on NT in 2000. It does require a fair amount of memory. By the time we added a full-text search engine on Teknoids.net, we had to go out and put a gig of memory in it. But
you have to.
Well, yeah, actually, John, we did, because we're pretty much running with about 2K of available memory, which is really not a good idea. Things would get, every time the indexing, we're using Alkaline as the full text search engine for the the archives. Eventually, I'll probably shift that to the database, but for right now, we're using that, and it actually ties up a lot of memory. Without that, we were okay with what we had in there, which was like 256. Yeah. Luckily, the price of memory was low when we got that, and it's gotten even lower since then. Actually, by about $100 for a gigabyte. I don't know if anybody's looked at memory prices recently, but I recently bought a gigabyte of RAM memory for a box I built for like $262. So it's kind of funny. Well, because I've got this 8 meg stick at my house that I paid $399 for 6 years ago, and and so it's quite funny. I think I've got one more here. Yeah, there we go. What's next? I built the framework, you built the content. There are about 125 registered users right now on Teknoids.net, and about 7 posts, actually 10 or maybe 12. One person came up to me at the conference and said, I look at the site like every couple of days, and I think it's great, but how come you haven't put any questions there? And I said, well, I did when I had some. I put some there, but I said, if you have a question, and that you think would be appropriate, for one of those forums, by all means, I mean, one thing that I see this as useful with or for is that a lot of times people will post to Teknoids and they'll have a question, and they'll say, just reply to me, sort of off channel. And presumably, well, there are 2 reasons for doing that. One, you're doing something hush-hush and you don't want anybody to know about it, in which case, by all means, keep up. But the other thing is a lot of times people do it because they have a sense that, like, the response that they get back is going to be something that's going to be useful for them right now, and they don't want all that mail going to sort of everybody, right? Well, they might be right then, except that 10 days down the road, another person has exactly the same question, and they ask again, So I think that one use here is to sort of put the question on there and sort of do what I did. Send the thing to Teknoids.net saying I posted the question to the list, to Teknoids list, and and just say I posted the question on Teknoids. If everybody wants to go over there and answer it, by all means, and then that's there, and it's serving a lot of the same sort of function. Because a lot of times people summarize back to the list with that stuff too. And so it's I think that there's a lot of potential there. Now the forums that I've set up on Teknoids were sort of a first stab, and if anybody thinks that they should be adjusted or has other ideas or anything like that, I'm all ears. So, does anybody have any questions? Well, I've been rambling on forever.
I have a question about Alkaline.
Sure.
Alkaline?
Mm-hmm.
We're running on a T4. It's very CPU intensive for that by small resources. So you're running on Linux.
Yeah.
You tell me your experience. And so when it does a search to the site, it does a good result. It's a good software, but for once in a while, it just restarts the whole lot. It's a test box.
Yeah, I mean, it was tying up tons of my memory. It was not too bad on CPU cycles, but actually Tom's probably got, because he runs like the biggest Alkaline thing in the world, because he's indexing all kinds of stuff from all over the place. So.
Yeah, we've got about 70,000 documents now in the U.S. The circuit board database spread sucked off 13 servers nationally. And yeah, it eats everything in sight. I think it would do that if it had 5 documents it was indexing. It has roughly the same attitude toward RAM as Genghis Khan did toward Europe. It's really quite awful that way. In fact, I just got off the phone with Patricia, just went out and bought 3 gigs of RAM, a second processor for the Linux box running it.
I'm going to give her a hug next week.
For precisely that reason. But if you look at their documentation, that's by design. They've optimized retrieval speed at the expense of the memory intensive. Cut down a little bit on that by using their swap option. And that does help a great deal. But yeah, it's a pig. It's a very fast pig.
once we put it, we put right, 100 megabytes more quickly, so it does search by search quickly. But for the duration while it's searching, the server stops responding, and you can see it's flying back and forth, just using it all. It doesn't give, and you cannot run this separate memory space. You cannot assign memory to that arrow. It just consumes the whole thing. Yeah.
Anybody else? I know that there were probably more questions than just about alkaline.
Is Teknoids.net a part of the footer that goes on the Teknoids mail messages these days?
No.
That might be helpful to remind you.
That could cloud another issue that's come to my attention recently, which is people think I'm Tom. Which is to say...
Really unfortunate. Both.
For both of us, that's right.
That you were Peter.
I mean, people are assuming that with the Teknoids.net stuff that I'm also running the list. I mean, it would be nice to change the footer to point to that archive since it's bigger than yours.
I guess I'll pop a cat out of the bag at this point. We know that within 3 months or so, Quentin is going to stop development on this project. They haven't stopped it yet already, and we are looking for another solution for stuff. At this point, we run a dozen mailing lists out of Cornell, 3 of which are intensive in terms of volume, either because they have high numbers of subscribers, as with the Supreme Court summary, about 35,000, or because there's a high volume of messages times a fair number of subscribers, which is the case with a couple of the other lists, not Teknoid. For the high volume stuff, we're probably going to look for a listserv-like solution. The other stuff, the smaller discussion lists, we were either going to move into web crossing, which we're using as discussion software for most of our distance learning stuff. Or in the case of Teknoid, frankly, I had thought about simply abandoning the old format altogether and moving it there. It's a few months down the road yet, but it's something that we're looking at because we know that this project is going to slide out.
Okay, well, there you go. I didn't even know that.
That'll be the end of that confusion. It'll be your problem.
It'll be my problem. And for which I thank you, I think. I don't know.
I still want to get
Yes.
to have a look at the PHP Nuke project when they decided on what.
Yeah, actually, I had looked at PHP Nuke, and like slash code and PHP Nuke, and there's just a whole family of those. And the real problem with those was that I was literally forced into their paradigm in terms of the way that the thing was going to look and operate. I mean, it wasn't, without actually going in and doing fairly extensive rewrites in PHP or Java in a couple of things, or whatever it happened to be running with. I was sort of locked into their view of the way things worked. Not here. I mean, this actually gave me complete flexibility in terms of how that. How the site looks, acts, feels, responds, what modules I want to use, and all the rest of it, with a really solid data model living underneath it that was, that is pretty robust. So I like this more than those other things, because I had actually at the point I had made up my mind. Matter of fact, this original presentation today was supposed to be me and John Heywood talking about how we rewrote PHP Nuke to suit Teknoids.net, right? But I was that close to starting that process when I got pointed at this, and John Mayer actually sort of said, you need to look at this again some more, because I had looked at it and I was like, AOL server, TCL, I'm Apache guy, and
We wanted something we could get up really fast with a lot of functions built in out of the box. And that's what OpenACS gives you. It's got the chat, the discussion groups, the forums, the user management system, a little bit of a content management system. What he's using here is something called Wimpy Point, sort of like that PowerPoint, but Wimpy Point. All of those just come out of the box and work once you get the basic system running. It's all database backed, all transactional, so it scales amazingly well. If 10,000 people started hammering at this every day, it would handle it. It totally would.
because he runs the same system. Philip Greenspan runs photo.net, and he does get 100,000 hits a day. It has been since like 93 or so. So it's a really robust piece of software that was out of the box, open source. A couple of weeks to sort of figure out where the widgets went, and we're cooking.
Yeah.
Pretty is not the purpose. Community access is.
Yeah, and I mean it's not ugly, but and it actually I'm actually working on a couple of things, including like there's no sort of mechanism like for the thing that John talked about with having resource pages dealing with accommodating individuals with disabilities, right? There's because the content management system is just a wreck. There's sort of no way to kind of do that. So I'm actually working on 2 modules that one I'm calling features, which lets me take some author like Ben and say, Ben, you're going to write a piece about something, and yeah, there you go, and you can just go to this page and type it all in or punch in your HTML, whatever you want to do, and it'll credit it to you, make sure you get the proper citation and all the rest of that stuff, and that'll go into the database, and then that'll be there. We can generate pages from it and do things like draw off the first paragraph as an abstract and all that kind of stuff. And then the second thing is it doesn't sort of handle either like sort of discrete chunks of links, so like a resources kind of thing. So I can say I've got resources, and the category is accommodating disabilities, and here's a dozen websites, right? But then we link the features and the resources together, so that when you go to the feature page that opens your article, it's got the resources on the side. Or if you go to the page that has all the resources, it has a little list of the feature articles that relate back to those resources that are available on the site. I hope to have that done.
That's like we're talking like half hours or a couple of hours for putting those things together, rather than multi-week
things. Yeah. It's actually wow.
It's not good for everything. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
The whole point here is distributed content development rather than spending any amount of time doing HTML coding. Right? Nobody should be doing hand coding anymore.
What about the XML support? I heard XML go by real quickly. It does do some XML out the back.
Yeah, there's an XML module for AOL server, and TCL can handle XML. OpenACS itself doesn't deal with XML, and the reason for that is that the regular ACS, the full-blown one that uses Oracle, relies on Oracle's XML. It doesn't do any of its own XML. It just uses what Oracle does, and it actually has some tremendous XML stuff, but it's all coming out of Oracle. Postgres doesn't do that. So the folks who've been developing this have stayed away from XML pretty much because they have But in theory, it's possible because the pieces are there. I mean, it relies on TCL, which can deal with XML, and it relies on AOL server, which can now deal with XML also. So, there is a possibility for some XML stuff there, and I'm keeping an eye on that. And it's not that difficult to sort of run a database query and suck out the info and slap XML tags around it.
Mr. Brinson Hales, if you had to integrate the thing in such a way as to create an integrated course discussion and student record administration environment, could you do it?
Yeah. There's actually, on the regular ACS system, they took version 3.5, which is the most recent complete version, if you do it that way. It runs on Oracle. And they actually have a full-blown education module that they've shown, like EDUCAUSE and stuff, that handles all of that sort of stuff. And it's built on top of Oracle. And you can get your hands on that.
It's written in PLSQL, so that would be back converted to whatever Postgres is.
Right, unless you happen to have Oracle handy.
Right.
In which case you can actually, you can go right ahead and run the whole thing. The education modules that are actually in here right now Actually, I don't think I really had them linked up, and I don't remember the URLs. But right now, what it handles sort of off the, what this handles off the shelf is sort of, this is my department, these are the courses in my department, and then it creates groups. These are the people who are registered in the system who are taking this course right now. And then here's the info about the course: syllabus, assignments, book descriptions. There's a bulletin board area, chat areas, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of in this right now, and you can play around with it a little bit if you wanted to.
You know what this is like? This is like those balsa wood airplane models kits used to get. In other words, the wood's already shaped to the right thickness. It's already been punched. You just have to pop the pieces out, sort of glue them together, and put your own coat of paint on it. So it's not a, drop it in and runs. It's a bunch of pieces that once assembled and then painted to the way you want it will run. And that's sort of what you sort of get with open. What? I think it's difficult, right? But that's sort of what open source is. But this is a lot like it's a lot like Zope, but not as confining, I think. So Zope is actually more powerful in some ways. There's different sort of feature sets they're trying to do there.
Well, I think one of the big changes with not being Zope part of the net for next year.
Well, I love Zope though.
Yeah, Zope is great.
I think that there are more of the sort of modules that describe them this way. I think there are more of those available for Zope. I still have difficulty getting my mind around Zope.
Yeah,
it is a very different environment.
Yeah, and this is also a different environment, but it's really easy to get your mind around it. So it's really not that. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's the whole thing is very different, but it's actually once you sort of get up and running, it's actually kind of fun, and partly because it's also kind of easy. This I just wanted to bring this up real quick because this is sort of shared file space where folks can upload stuff. Because John mentioned some stuff about like code sharing and stuff. And you can do that through the under My Teknoids. There's a link for files, and you can go in there and you can actually like load stuff up. Just have a grand old time. It may not work. I don't know. I've had people run across stuff. Oh, that's the other thing. If you happen to be poking around in here and something doesn't behave the way that you think that it should, okay, by all means, send me a message. Or there's actually a help forum there too. Post there, because I don't see everything. Plus, I've got like the admin God privileges, and we know how that works when you're dealing with systems, right? Everything works because I have access to everything. I mean, I have an account that's just a regular user, but I haven't rolled it to every possibility for everything on the site. I try to do that, but it takes up a lot of time. So if you do come across something, because sometimes I'll get errors, they'll come back to me in the email from the error log, because it sends me email when new errors crop up. And it'll be clear that somebody's run into a brick wall somewhere where there should have been a door, right? And I've fixed a couple of those as they've cropped up, but it'd be useful if people would let me know when that happens, because it's all fixable and it's okay. I can do that. So, anything else?
The book is also on the web.
Oh, right.
Photo.net, I think it's /Panda.
Yeah.
Philip and Alex.
Right, yeah. That's right.
If not, search for Philip and Alex's Guide to Web Publishing. It's a great read. It's techy, but it's funny.
Yeah.
It's not like reading a manual at all.
Right.
It's actually stories about his website.
Sprinkled with real life SQL examples.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks. Oh, and